Okay, Henry, what you got for number 4?
Okay, I really like this one. We're
I
going
hope so.
back in time again. I'm sorry.
He said, I hope so.
Oh yeah, yeah. The interesting thing is that the prime composer and the prime mover of this band hated this album, and it's my favorite by them by far. And it was basically sort of like kind of it was beginning to look like Fairport Convention. You never knew from one album to the next who's going to be on it. My all-time favorite King Crimson album is Lizard. I'm sorry, guys. I love it. I love that album.
No apologies. I love it. No
Yeah,
apologies.
Rip hated it. He absolutely hated it. I mean, like it looked like basically pretty much a who's who of his jazz friends and stuff like that, and some guys who eventually ended up touring with the subsequent versions of King Crimson. But my all-time favorite King Crimson album is Lizard. No apologies. Love it. From start to finish, nothing wrong with that album. Sorry, Bob.
I certainly couldn't say favorite, but that's a phenomenal album.
It is. I agree. And anything with Keith Tippett on it, I just loved it. You know, his piano work on that is just gorgeous. And they're not known for keyboard players. I mean, King Crimson was never really known for keyboard players.
Right.
And whenever Tippett was there, bassist, it was this guy's good. So yeah, so that's my pick. Definitely.
Well, you know, they've been playing stuff from that in the recent tours now, right? With the latest lineup of Grim, they were doing stuff from that album.
Yeah, the whole Prince Rupert thing basically is like one of my all-time favorite. Especially with John Anderson singing the lead on that. Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
They did sections of that, just not without the Anderson vocal, but they were working in stuff from that album. I saw them do a couple of things from that. Beautiful.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, that's my pick. Lizard.
Is there a bad King Crimson album?
Earthbound for me.
There's something that
Earthbound
sounds like it was recorded on a 12 transistor radio, basically.
Yeah. There are some that I don't really care for. Thrack is, I think, my all-time favorite, and then Discipline, and just totally different albums.
Yeah.
You know, you had the '80s Beat, Three of a Pair, and Discipline, where Bruford hit the cymbal maybe 8 times on a total of all 3 albums. You know, as Fripp said, I don't want cymbals, but I stole a lot of his style for doing stuff too. It's interesting.
Yeah, I guess maybe Gabriel and he were spending a lot of time together, because I think that was the idea behind the third Gabriel album. Is no cymbals, basically, pretty much.
Exactly right. Yes.
It's cool.
Yeah, took his cymbals away.
Okay,
yeah, they were buds for a while. I think Fripp actually toured with him for his first or second tour. I think it was basically. So yeah.
Hey,
cool. They always had interesting, huh? Yeah, you're up.
Okay, so my number 4 pick. Before I do it, I wanted to show. Here's my copy of the Atlas album.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and there's all the autographs.
Ah, there you go.
And is that an official release?
Yes, I believe it was an official release, but let's see, the label, which I think was from Sweden, is Ad Perpetuum Memoriam. Yeah, it's a Swedish label that I think went out of print a while ago. I don't know much about the label. I don't know whether it was considered a legitimate label and whether it's the licensing and everything was 100%. But I mean, they were interested in signing Advent back in, before we signed with Melody Records originally.
I remember that. Yeah.
I think Michael Thorne was the guy's name. So, but yeah, there's some other good stuff on there, but the Atlas was my favorite. So I'll go to my number 4 pick, because I know we're running long because we're long-winded guys. But this album is one I discovered when I started to really get into buying a lot of international progressive rock music. First through a guy named Doug Larson, who turned out to be local here in New Jersey. And I won't get into the story of how I hooked up with him, but I used to go to his house all the time. And he would play a bunch of things for me. And as soon as he put this album on, I was hooked. And it's still one of my favorites to this day. It's Mr. Serious Barren Dream.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
This is the original Digipack pressing, which I think is pretty rare. And then they ended up doing a remaster of it with a different cover. I'm sorry, I should take it out of my protective packaging, but it's just a phenomenally beautiful album. It's mostly one person, Kazuhiro Miyatake, with a great female vocalist and a drummer. and Miyatake-san plays all the instruments aside from drums on it. And it's just it's symphonic, it's classical, it's fusiony, but it's got really beautiful female vocals that are almost like Kate Bush-like. I can't really do it justice. I believe he was a big fan of Fauré, so you hear a bit of Fauré influence in the more classical bits. But it's just a phenomenal album, and the album after Dirge is just about as good too. And for a while, it became my favorite when it came out. But then I went back to Baron Dream. They're both just like indispensable as far as I'm concerned. And Baron Dream was from 1986.
Cool. All right. Well, I used to go to the record stores and spend all day just going, flipping through each thing and covers. I was a sucker for covers to at least pull it out. And this particular one, I pulled the cover out and started reading the back and finding out that there was all kinds of percussion instruments on it. That turned out to be Fire Ballet, Night on Gold, very symphonic. Ian McDonald actually played some flute and sax and produced it. He liked it so much. The one thing that I never liked about the original album is the mix was a little funky. And then their second album got really poo-pooed because it had that horrible cover. Let me see if it's
Two.
Yeah, 2-2. It had that horrible cover. Yeah, they didn't even include it in the remix. So they remixed both albums, and 2-2 had a much more interesting cover.
But way better than the original cover for sure.
Yeah, and they
original one's pretty
resequenced it
disturbing.
and they did a remaster. When it first came out, I was a little, I don't know, but after listening to it again, I always liked it, but it wasn't, it was kind of like the late Gentle Giant days when you went, but I highly recommend Night on Bald Mountain. Excellent symphonic progressive. I don't know who you would compare them to.
Yeah, well, it's really funny you should bring them up for a few reasons, and I know we're
You beat me to it. Go ahead, go
Yeah.
for it.
Me too. I got a lot of background on these guys too.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, there's a real personal connection to Advent because their bass player wanted to audition to join Advent, and we met with him, and he was a really cool guy, Spike Biglin, who very sadly died quite a while ago, but he wanted to basically try to resurrect Fire Ballet and combine it. He wanted to bring Jim Cuomo, who lived one town over from here, and sort of do like a joint collaborative effort, sort of Advent Fire Ballet together. And we just didn't want to do that, so we respectfully declined. And
You were still in Scotch Plains then, right, Alan?
I think he lived in Middlesex.
No, I think you were, but you guys were in
I
Scotch.
was, yeah, I was in Scotch Plains and he was in Middlesex.
Right.
And if you have the picture, if the CD includes the picture on the back, that's taken in the town of Raritan, which is actually where Jim lives. It's a water treatment building that looks like a castle right off the Raritan River. And we bicycle over there all the time, right by there. I've been actually wanting to take my copy of the album over there and hold it up against that building. That's where they took it. They're actually down by the river looking up, I believe. And it's not that easy to get to that side of it, but I've taken a bunch of pictures bicycling around there. And so yes, they're local, and Rich Schland, the guitarist, is a friend, and I've known him for a long time too.
The
So my
picture
experience with
kind of
them-
reminds me of the first Black Sabbath album.
Yeah,
Say that again. What? What reminds you of Black
The
Sabbath?
picture on the back of the Fire
it's funny.
Ballet.
It's funny you're saying that because the only time I saw Fire Ballet live, they opened for Black Sabbath.
How funny, yeah.
I saw them in Asbury Park. People were throwing stuff at them during Night on Bald Mountain. They didn't care. They got
They
through
didn't
their
get
set.
it. Yeah.
They were not, but a Black Sabbath crowd was not ready for them, unfortunately.
They were my Mob Vision orchestra.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
People didn't know what was going on when they hit the stage, not Black Sabbath fans. But I have a story that goes back even further. When I was in high school, I don't know what year it was, I was a president of my class. You know, we had school dances at the time. So I needed to hire a band. So these guys were local. They lived, a couple of them lived in Woodbridge. But at the time, they were called the Fireball Kids. That was their original name when they were a cover band. So I hired them as the Fireball Kids. They actually did some ELP stuff. They did some prog stuff, but they were still largely just a cover band at the time. And a couple of years later, Night on Bald Mountain came out.
Wow. The one song, Centurion, Tales of Fireball Kids.
There you go. Right, exactly. That was their original name.
Yeah, it was a good band. I was thrilled when I saw that they had remastered them, and I just grabbed those real quick.
Really good.
All right, so we're on number 5, and Mark, why don't you do your number 5?
Okay, I'm gonna go in a completely different direction. Although I'm gonna, this is another one I don't have myself personally, but I believe I may have purchased this for Henry as a gift once upon a time. And you can correct me, Henry, if that's incorrect or not. But but this is from 1990. We've all heard the material. I'm sure we've all heard the material. If you haven't heard it, you've been living under a rock somewhere. And I still think that, I don't know whether it's, you know, the natural way of things progressing, or you know, or there was a subconscious thing, but I still think that, you know, the elements of prog today, or even rather in the 70s, whatever, probably had their, you know, their influences and starting points probably from here and maybe even further back. But this is, I have to show this picture here. So I don't know if you can see this from my phone. It's not going to come. If I go like that, maybe. All right, I'm just going to have to tell you. It's the Carl Stalling project.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So
You mean this one?
Oh, you have it there? Well, it doesn't look like, no, it looks like
Is that the one that's like volume 1 or something?
Yeah,
That's got, every sound effect you ever wanted from Looney Tunes and the music is all on here. It's great.
Yeah,
It's
I have that one.
Yeah, so that's the one, if you can see that one. It's fantastic stuff. I mean, this is like all cut and paste compositions, you know, by Carl Stalling. You know, I think it was a new thing for them at the time in the 50s, or rather the 30s through the 50s, to be doing following music following the action on the screen. Folky thematic, jazz themed, you know, themes of the day, you know, just all intermingled with, these cut and paste compositions that were just hilariously funny. And if you could just sit there and just listen to the music on these CDs, and what's great about it is you can hear various takes, right? So they'll, you know, whoever is I don't know if it's Carl Stalling himself, you can hear, you know, counting them in or whatever. And it's funny, it almost sounds like some of the whoever's counting it in and making the corrections as they're playing sounds like one of the voices that Mel Blanc would do. And so I wondered if Mel had actually said, you know what, I'm going to use his voice and I'm going to try to imitate it in some of these cartoons, because it really sounds like that, you know, that same character. Anyway,
it's funny that you mention that. Yeah, I actually looked into some of that stuff. You know why Stallings was so fast? Basically, they actually had these books, like what we call fake books, I guess, for like jazz melodies, and you harmonize them pretty much whichever way you want. You just have the melody and the basic chart. They actually had books for the theaters that basically were categorized according to like agitation, terror, whimsy kind of a situation. And and these guys were phenomenal sight readers. They would just basically switch back and forth. They'd watch there'd be cues over there for them to be able to say, okay, the action on the screen is thus and such, and they'd get cued. Okay, this is what you need for this, and they'd flip to it immediately. And they, like in midstream, they could basically go right from whatever they were doing and play right into whatever the music was appropriate to whatever was going on the screen, because those were silent movies in the beginning. Basically, that's how they actually got through them. But they actually had these things were like fake books, but it was all done like on the theater organs and stuff. It was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Never heard that before. That's a cool story. Great story.
They're really funny compositions. Like I said, if you just sit and listen to it, and even just, having seen the cartoons, kind of what, when you hear the music, you kind of know what's going on almost, just by listening to the music. So it's so thematic, and it's so, picturesque, and I found myself listening to it, over the last day or two, just like driving in the car and just like laughing hysterically, just because it's, and I knew that they'd stop and cut, okay, let's take bars 14 through 72, and then they would just jump right back into it. These guys were amazing.
And they couldn't stop laughing half the time. They'd be doing these things. They'd be trying to link it up, and they'd be watching this stuff. It's kind of like,
anytime it was just, it would just bust me up, so funny.
Yeah.
But this collection, Alan, if you don't have it, you should get, because it's got like the Dodo one on it, and Porky and Wacky Land or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's a great Doe for the Dodo.
Yeah, music
awesome.
on there is funny. Anyway, that's my number 5.
The Spokane Symphony out here, I think this month or next is doing, I believe it's Carl Stalling or else Milt Franklin. I think it's Carl Stalling. They're doing like 5 of the cartoons with the orchestra doing the,
Oh, that must be great.
it'd be
Yeah,
fun.
they did that with Lord of the Rings a few years back, actually. My son basically made a birthday gift of it. We went to Radio City Music Hall. And they Howard Shore and the entire orchestra, and they had the movie up there, and they actually did the entire score to Lord of the Rings live. It was really cool.
That's a tough job, it's
Yeah.
hard to do. They do it with Star Wars too. Okay, Graeg, you didn't do your 5 yet.
No, I didn't do 5 yet.
We're all
okay,
getting confused.
let's go completely the opposite way than I did last time.
Okay.
So this band is a British duo, although by any of the covers of most of their albums, you would think that they were of Asian extraction. The band is called Jade Warrior, and this is actually like a kind of a compendium of 4 different albums. So it's an anthology. So that's not the cover of the album that I would suggest. The album is called Kites, and they all have there's 4 albums that have very similarly themed covers like that with the Asian graphics. The Kites cover is particularly beautiful. So it's a British duo, John Field and Tony Duhigg. John Field, a flute player and woodwind player, Tony Duhigg, a guitarist. And pretty much they were a duo, but they had lots of guest artists all the time on all their albums. Kites is probably the most meditative if you're in the mood for something quiet. They kind of were on the scene way before people started using terms like world music and things like that. But certainly they had an Asian aesthetic to their music. So it's very minimalist, very Zen-like, lots of space for just quiet. In other words, they're kind of the opposite end of the spectrum to Henry Cow. So if you wanted, if you put on some Cow and you got a headache, you put on Jade Warrior, it'll take that headache right away.
It was like Eno, basically.
It's like the
Yeah,
detox.
right. Yes, exactly. Sort of like, if you put on Another Green World or something like that. Similar kind of aesthetic.
Before and after science, like you got on your back over there, basically. I see you got your before and after science on the wall back there.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Another great one. But yeah, unfortunately, I guess it was Tony Duhigg died quite young. John Field may still be alive. He did some stuff also with Mike Oldfield. So you would, I think John Field was actually, it might have even been on the original Tubular Bells or perhaps one of the second of Mike Oldfield's albums. So been out playing a long time. I think on the original live Tubular Bells, that might have been John Field on the flute as well. Really beautiful stuff. guest artists, so lots of violin, other kind of ethnic instruments creep in here and there. Multiple vocal parts, choir vocals. They were really inventive. They would use the studio to their advantage, and some of it seems like it might be largely improvised, but gorgeous stuff. Jade Warrior. Floating World, I think, was the one that first they started to kind of become the band that they later became. Because I think in the beginning their sound was a little bit more rock oriented for a couple albums, and then they kind of got into this more meditative sort of world music sound. But if you're in the mood for something meditative, beautiful stuff. Kites is the one I would recommend.
Very cool.
1976.
76.
So let's see. You still have Henry and the guy over there, right? Yeah, let's go with the guy over there, Alan.
The guy over there.
Okay, so I'm going to actually sneak in a reference because it makes sense here to somebody else who was definitely on my list as well, but doesn't really have any commercially released albums available anymore. They only pressed up a CD for a small tour that they did back in 2016, and I'm talking about Project RNL, who I absolutely love. And the reason I bring up Project RNL is that I made a friend from Italy through my friendship with Eyal Amir from Project RNL named Gabriele Gamelli. And we have very similar tastes in music, and we recommend things to each other every so often. And I believe it must have been in 2019 because it's when the album came out. He recommended this band to me, and they hadn't come out with this album yet. They'd only done one album, and he thought that it was good, but not great. But he said this next one's probably going to be good. And I think they just put out their first promotional video from it. When the album came out, I was just really floored, and it's probably my favorite album of the decade anyway. It's a prog metal band from Norway called Umful. And the title of the album is actually, well, I should know. I think it's wow, I gotta put on my readers to see it because it's stylized. I know the gist of it, but I'm really like having mental issues here. As the waters cover the sea. It's just phenomenal. It's really intricate, and it's mainly two guys. They were pretty young too. I think they were in their early 20s. They had a few more members on most of the tunes than their first album, which was really just kind of the two of them with a few, guests. There's a lot of guest guitar soloists on here, but the guitar playing is amazing. Rhythmically, it's one of the most interesting things I've ever heard, and it's very emotional. It just connects on like all kinds of levels, and even got me to the point where I can actually appreciate some growl vocals, because there are a little on the first track. There are actually some growl vocals, but they're interspersed with melodic vocals, and I've come to really love the way that they did that on the opening track, which also has one of my favorite grooves in 9 in it. So Umful, as the waters cover the sea, very, very highly recommended.
I love 9. 9 is such a cool meter. Birds of Fire. It took me forever to figure out that was in 9.
It's Burning Water is the opening track. So yeah, that 9 is just like, I'm surprised I didn't, break any steering wheels in the car drumming along to that one, cranking it up.
Yeah. Okay, Henry. Number 5.
Okay. Since we're going the gamut, I'm going to go back in time and recommend this one over here. Every time I bring this up to the band, I get glowers. I'd love to do this one, and I highly recommend this particular album. It's Roy Harris's Third Symphony, backed by William Schumann's Third Symphony. Excellent, really, really good. Roy Harris was actually surprisingly active pretty much. I believe he wrote the soundtrack to Profiles in Courage, which was a TV show back in the 60s. That's his music on there.
Hmm.
And he's a master of melodies that are non-symmetrical. There's polytonality, but you almost don't, it almost doesn't sound so much like polytonality as much as just basically pretty much like stuff is being done in what they call organum, where you're actually doing things in fifths, like parallel fifths, and the melodies are just absolutely striking, sweeping, beautiful. It is very American sounding. I mean, you can't listen to this symphony, especially the first 3 or 4 minutes of it, without thinking of these wide open like Midwestern expanses, prairies and stuff like that. It's very, very American sounding. And yet at the same time, again, the melodies are extremely modern. There's really nothing symmetrical about them, but they're just absolutely gorgeous. I highly recommend. The Schumann is great too on this. But if you haven't heard the Third Symphony by Roy Harris, that is his signature work. And I believe what the heck's her name? Was it Nadia? Was it Kusevitsky? I think is that Graeg? Is that the who's the oh, I can't remember. It's Nadia something. Right? I think it was basically was it Boulanger? I can't remember now. I'm getting
Nadia Boulanger.
Could have been her.
Nadia.
Yeah, she said that basically when she heard it, she said because at last the Americans have their definitive symphony, and it was the third.
Nadia Boulanger. Yeah.
Yeah,
Boulanger,
right. So yeah,
that would make
highly
sense.
recommend this one if you haven't heard it. I haven't given up on doing this one. I have a good portion of it basically, actually, kind of like sort of like in some sort of a form, basically on one of my Kronos files someplace. I'd still like to do at least the fugue from that, which doesn't sound like a traditional fugue at all. But the ending is just magnificent. And as I said, if you haven't heard it, whether you're a prog guy or not, type of a situation, if you are a prog fan, this is essential listening. I would definitely highly recommend the Roy Harris Third.
Cool. Roy Harris. Okay, so for my last, excuse me, my last one, I don't think this is going to come as too big a surprise to you guys. I'll just put it up there. Eccentric Orbit.
Oh, okay.
Martians. So I stumbled on this, I think it was M&M Music back in the 90s, who, it was either that one or maybe it was Shroom, I don't remember. But there were always these descriptions. And I thought, well, I gotta try that. And I just absolutely love it. I wrote a review of it on Prog Archives. It started off, do you love old 50s sci-fi movies? Do you love Hammond organs? Do you love fun and fresh yet nostalgic progressive music? Eccentric Orbit with Attack of the Martians has captured so many sounds, feelings, and ideas, atmospheres on this project that it at once is familiar yet unexplored. Just like those wonderful films of the 50s, silvery spaceships, weird landscapes, the blonde with the tight-fitting spacesuit, and the guys with their little 32 caliber pistols. It goes on.
And cardboard gravestones.
Yeah, just or balloons in the caves of Invaders from Mars.
Yeah.
Great album. They re-released it in 2014 with an added track, The Day the Earth Stood Still. In 2014, they also did Creation of the Humanoids. On this, they had a added guy, Tom Benson, who does violin and electric guitars and things. And
when was that originally released?
huh?
When does that date back to?
Which one?
That album. When does the album date back to?
This one?
Yeah, that particular one you held up before. 2014. What about the Eccentric Orbit album you were showing though?
Yeah, these are both Eccentric Orbit. This was 2004.
Oh, 2004.
And then 10 years later, unfortunately, their drummer Mark Sella died of like a brain tumor, so they never really finished. But then they had partially recorded The Day the Earth Stood Still, and with Rick Landwehr, I think his name is, and
should double bill with Klaatu.
Huh?
They should double bill that one with Klaatu.
Yeah.
Was Mark one of the owners of M&M Music? Am I
Yeah.
correct in remembering that?
I think so, yeah.
He was one of the
I think
M's I thought
so.
of. Eminem.
So, there's that front cover. And I love the back cover. Never trust a Martian.
What's your favorite cut on there?
Oh, geez. You know, I think Attack of the Martians. It's like a three-piece suite. And I've done a bunch of videos. I think I've done almost the whole album of the original. I think I even did The Day the Earth Stood Still, using some of the original footage. Anyway, all right. Shoot,
Well,
we
this has
got like
been
8 minutes
a lot of
left
fun.
on this.
This has
I
been
know you
great.
guys got a bunch of honorable mentions.
But thanks.
We'll do
We
it
can
later.
just all shout out a couple, one or two honorable mentions in a few minutes. Just without
I'll start. There's a little band I don't know if you guys would be interested. I don't know. They put out like 3 albums.
Who are those guys?
Thanks. Those hacks.
Although I do want to mention, I love Starcast.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I saw them
Starcast.
actually open up for Gentle Giant.
I hate the whole, oh, it's a clone of Jet. Yes, it's totally different. You were talking about Triumph Rap. That's a clone. These guys just happen to do that style. Totally different. I thought their vocals far superior to Yes's. But anyway,
They were a 6-piece, weren't they?
I think so. And Roy Thomas Baker produced them initially, I believe, too, if I remember correctly.
I think they might have been, yeah. But anyway.
So yeah, just I guess maybe we'll just like if everybody has a list of alternates, if we just want to like rotate and just like run down the list, then we hopefully have enough time before we get cut off.
All right, who's going?
Well, go ahead. Let's see how far we can get.
Okay.
Alan, you got.
Yeah. Okay.
kinda-
Yeah, I'll just
Good
rattle
amount.
them all off. Ambrosia, Somewhere I've Never Traveled, Aviary self-titled album, Ken
Yes.
Watson, Kenso Yume no Oka, Lentava Siemen, self-titled Farmers Market, Music for a Hybridine, Mats Öberg, and Gub, which it translates to Gruel and Kerosene, Valing and Photogen, I guess, or Photogen. Absalom Ariel, the Love Beach Girls Choir, Project RNL, the internet releases I was talking about before, Art the Band, Snacks EP, digital only, I believe, and a really short EP named Very Good Friends. The title is 27 Chords and a Bunch of Lies. And that's it.
Cool. Okay, Mark, you got a quick list there?
Yeah, I'm gonna go real fast. Thomas Dolby, Aliens Ate My Buick. Lyle Workman, what is this one? Harmonic Crusader. And also the one after that, I think, which is Uncommon Measures. Great albums. Another one by Dan Bonmark. This one's called Type. I think I'm pronouncing that right. That's wonderful too. Jazzy, funky, jazz rock fusion stuff. Of course, Roger Joseph Manning solo work, and an album by a friend of ours, Ernie Dinov, Bad Dog U. back a ways. I think this is from the 80s. So wonderful stuff there.
Awesome. Okay, Greg.
Okay, we have to mention one guy who's a big friend of all Adventers, and that's Dave Stewart. This is an early album of Hatfield in the North. If you guys know Hatfield in the North, this was their second release, Rotters Club. That would be the one to seek out. That was the early form of National Health, of course. We mentioned this before, Another Green World, a masterpiece by Eno. Just the cut of St. Elmo's Fire with that incredible guitar solo by Robert Fripp. Prog fans would love that. And of course, we got to mention Mike Oldfield, one of my favorites. This is the 4th album release of his, Incantations. Has a little tie-in with Pekka Pohjola. I can't ever say his name. Alan mentioned him before. Pekka was, I think, on this album, but he was definitely on the live Incantations performances. Great double album, fantastic. Full orchestra, 50-piece choir, great guitar solos. Can't go wrong. Everybody would love it.
Cool. Henry.
Mark beat me too. I'm going to use the other one. Tabula Rasa, Kyle Workman, excellent album, super. All of his stuff is great, but this one's really, for me, is really special. I really like this one a lot. Basically, let me see. I do. It's a toss-up for me for this band. This is another one of those bands that didn't know they were prog until they started, like, sort of until people found themselves mentioning in the same breath as a lot of the Anglophile stuff that's out there. It's a toss-up between 3 albums for me, either From the Witchwood by the Straubs, Ghosts, or Hero and Heroine by the Straubs. And
So good.
yeah, I can't resist basically these two over here, especially. Sorry, I know it's basically pretty much it's old news by this point, but Heavy Weather, Mr. Gone, The Weather Report, and also the second self-titled album, the one that starts off with Volcano for Hire, not the first one, also Weather Report, and that wraps it up for me.
Cool.
Great ones.
I got 3 quick
We're
ones.
almost out of time too, so I think
Yeah.
we went pretty well, right? I got 2 minutes.
I got 3 quick ones. Patrick Moraz,
Oh, okay.
Story of I. Just
Yeah.
incredible. That's a desert island for me. England, who I discovered.
Oh, England.
This, years ago. This is an esoteric, big old double, nice.
That's a great album.
Yeah.
This band, Tranquility, the album is Silver. Kind of like they would have been a great opening act for Star Castle. Vocals were just absolutely, they loved Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. All right, well, we're down to the wire here. I want to thank Alan, Henry, Mark, Greg, guys from Advent. Check them out. We'll put some links in for that. You guys got some new stuff coming out pretty soon, maybe next year, I guess. Thanks, guys. This was fun.
Thank you so much, Frank. This was really
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
so many
Thank you so
connections.
much.
I'm so like surprised in such a really cool way by all these connections. I had no
Yeah,
idea
it's
it would be so personal. It's so
Great stuff to check out from everybody's list too.
Yeah.
Excellent.